Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Rutledge. Thanks for being here today. Since it's springtime and I do a lot of planting and gardening in the spring, and as well as other people do, we're going to be doing some fun stuff about plants. A few weeks ago I did a story about how plants grow and seeds grow called The Tiny Seed. And we looked at some bulbs, which are like big seeds that regrow every year if you plant them in the ground. And today I'm going to read a story that is a nonfiction story about what happens to seeds in the springtime. And then we're going to be doing some other videos about plants, and I hope that you join us in our doing some science and learning. We're going to be doing some drawing. I'm going to take you to my garden and show you how I'm planting some things in my garden, and we're going to watch them grow and see what happens, and maybe you'll grow some things along with me. So today I'm reading Plants in Spring, and this story is by Martha Rustad and Gail Saunders-Smith, and they wrote the words and took real pictures. This is a nonfiction story, and so it's going to have real pictures of real plants. Okay? Plants in spring. Oh, thumbs up for the title page, all about spring, plants in the spring. Now, sometimes nonfiction stories will have something that looks like this. It's called a table of contents. And a table of contents basically tells you specific things that this book is going to be talking about. So that way, if you're writing a report and you just need to find specific information, you don't necessarily have to read the whole book. You could look up in the table of contents on what page that specific topic is being discussed. And you can just turn to that page and read that section of the book. So our table of contents, it talks about new season. It talks about from sunlight to food and from flowers to fruit. So those are the three main sections of the story. And then it has a glossary. Glossary at the end of a book tells you important words that you read in the book and what they mean, their definitions. And that's important to have sometimes, especially in nonfiction books where you may run into a lot of scientific words or big words that you haven't heard or seen before, and you might not know what they mean. And then it gives a couple other resources for things. Let's check it out. New season. It is spring. We plant seeds and wait for the sunlight and the rain. So here's a hand, there's some seeds, there's some soil, and they're planting, they're spreading the seeds out, letting them fall. And you have to cover them up. Spring rain makes the ground wet, and plant roots will suck up the water from the soil. And that's what we see here. And we have a label. Sometimes when we draw pictures, it's important to kind of label things to show what we know or what we understand. So they've labeled this roots, and it's pointing to all those little white, they look like little white strings. Those are the roots. Here's the seeds that they planted, and here's the soil that gets covered up over the seeds. And then you can already start to see some little green shoots starting to poke up and push up through that soil. And that's what happens. Soon shoots and stems poke through the soil. And there they are. They usually come out, the seed is under the soil like this, and it comes up, and it's bent when it first comes up out of the soil, and then it goes bing, and goes straight up, and then you have these little seed leaves. That's what they're called, the seed leaves. They're the first leaves of the new plant. kind of like the baby leaves. Now we're going to read about what those leaves do as the plant continues to grow. From sunlight to food, daylight lasts longer in the spring and in the summer too. Leaves take in that sunlight. So the main job of the leaves, the reason why plants have leaves, is their job is to take in that sunlight, and they use it. What do they use it to do, you might ask? Well, we're going to find out. Plants make their own food, right? They can't go to the grocery store and get food like you do or your parents do, right? There's nobody cooking over a stove to feed them. So their food is something that they have to make inside of them. And they need certain things to help them make their food. And sunlight is one of those. And that's why the leaves are so important, because the leaves help soak up that sunlight. They use sunlight, water, air, and then nutrients. So the sunlight comes from the sun, the air, the oxygen and the carbon dioxide that's in the air, and the water that they get from watering, and nutrients, which is what is in the soil. That's why the soil is important. So now that plant is grown, and then it does something amazing. From flowers to fruit. Bees like bright blooming flowers. Bees gather nectar from the flowers. So on that plant, sometimes, especially if it's a vegetable or a fruit type of plant, there'll be a flower at some point that grows. And then the bees come along and they go from flower to flower, and they do something very special. Here's what they do. Pollen from flowers sticks to the bees' legs. Here's their back legs. Look at it. It looks like fuzzy orange fur, but it's actually pollen that comes off these little yellow parts of the plant, the little inside part where the nectar is. The bees, I don't know that they even know that they do this, but they do. So that pollen sticks to their legs, and then as they go from flower to flower, some of it rubs off on the flower that they're crawling on. And it rubs off on these little stamen. Those are the little things that are inside the flowers. Bees carry that pollen from flower to flower. And we call that, it's a special big long word, it's called pollination. Whoa, that's a really big word. Yeah, it's called pollination. And pollination has to happen in order for that flower to turn into something really exciting. If that flower gets pollinated, it's going to turn into something really cool, like maybe an apple. Soon flowers and some flowers make fruits. New seeds will grow inside that fruit. And if you were in my class in kindergarten at the beginning of the school year, we did a whole big unit on apples. And we learned all about the pollination of the apple flowers on the apple trees. And we found the seeds on the inside of the apple, on the inside of the core. We learned all about the parts of the apple and everything. So much fun. Spring is a season for planting and growing. What plants do you see in spring? I've seen a lot of these. In fact, I just bought some for my friend, Mrs. Jager, because it was her birthday. This is a flower called a tulip. Not all flowers create a fruit, like an apple or an orange. Some flowers are just for flowers. Yeah, I've seen a lot of those. So That's what happens to seeds and plants in the spring. Yeah, check it out. Next, I'm going to do a video where we're going to do some drawing about the parts of a plant. And if you want to do that video with me, you sure can.